Okay, so hello to anyone who is actually watching this. We have two Alexa folks here who are going to talk about engagement in all the various flavors that is. I'll introduce myself. I'm Brian Tarbox. I'm a Amazon community hero. I run, which basically just means I talk a lot. Amazon recognized that I talk a lot. My wife could, with love, say, I could have told you that. She says, never get between me and a microphone. I also run the Boston meetup. And if you know Boston accents, we've renamed ourselves the Boston user group. And my day job, I work in cancer genomics and I write Alexa skills on the side. And this is a good cue for me to mute my Alexa devices.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Because I've muted you. And I'll hand it over to my co-conspirator here.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'm doing actually the same. So I also mute my Alexa so that we don't get any any engagement surprises. Thanks for setting this up and inviting me. I'm Christian Bonzelet. I based in Cologne in Germany, and I work for the Bundesliga, the German soccer league, and concrete the company named Deutsche Fußballliga, and I'm an AWS solution architect in this company, and I'm also an AWS community builder. So also part of this program, and trying to learn and enable a lot of people in the serverless ecosystem and so on. And I'm very happy to talk about engagement today, because engagement in our business is, I think, very important, and I would say one of the most important aspects of football also. And yeah, we did some improvements and built some features around all this engagement and personalization stuff, which might be very interesting, hopefully.
Right, same here. And I'm going to make a comment that I'll probably edit out. Looking at my blurred background, it looks like I've got a giant middle finger going. I have no idea what that.
Now, as you said, I see it. I did not see it before.
Okay.
But, yeah.
It's funny because I usually don't use a blur background, and it occurred to me, it's like, oh, it looks like I'm giving everyone the finger, which is an ideal.
Yeah.
And now coming back to the part after we probably cut. And I'll say the way that we got connected for viewers is that I have a primary skill called Premier League, which covers British football. And we tend not to use the soccer word in our house because it's not. And if we refer to American football, we use, my son likes the term hand-egg ball. So I've had this skill for about 5 years, and it started out being just a hobby for me, but it's gotten pretty popular. And I also just recently added a thing where you can get just the table, the standings for Bundesliga as well, and the championship, which is the level underneath Premier League in England, and then La Liga and Series A. So we happen to notice, hey, we both do Alexa stuff about football. Well, we should collaborate somehow. And so, and thus here we are. And it is, as much as obviously the pandemic is pretty awful, what were the odds that, you know, a German and American could stumble upon Alexa and football?
Yeah, but I would say I'm compared to you, I would say I'm just a beginner on the Alexa world. So just getting into touch, what can we do out of this technology? But I remember that I wrote a post on LinkedIn where I announced a bit on a slide deck I created about I would say the magic or the mindset behind sending out push notifications. So independent if it's a notification you get per voice channel, like your Alexa device, or if it's a push notification you get on your mobile device, or if it's an email or anything that that aims to engage you for using a product in the end. And I thought a lot about this. What would be the storyline of the session of this talk actually? And in the end, I try to bring in a different perspective, a different mindset. That it's not about the technology for us, and it's more about what we aim to do is we want to create emotions, and this technology is one transporting layer to trigger emotions or to create these goosebumps moments. And then you responded also and said, hey, there's this Premier League Alexa skill, and I thought that this is actually quite interesting, because I think so my reaction on this was, yeah, it's about the same thing in the end, right? It's about creating these goosebumps moments and creating emotions, and not just transporting data or insights in the end, which is I think a different perspective on technology or what we do.
Right. Well, they say that it's always easier to remember a story than a set of facts. And I actually took a seminar on spoken word poetry, of all things, and the speaker said everything is a performance. You know, giving a presentation is a performance. Being in a meeting is a performance. Everything is a performance, and people will remember a story. And you know, at a certain level, engagement to us means that more people are using our system, which, you know, more people use our system, a miracle happens and profit. And Alexa, that last part is pretty vague. So because you can get the data, you could just get the data. I mean, I could just, you know, Google, you know, how is Liverpool doing, and it's like, okay, so why should what we do, or how is um, God, I'm Bayern Munich. Sorry, I just didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so I was like desperately trying to remember a team, which is crazy because I live and breathe this stuff. But it's you know, we want to make this compelling and interesting, and other, you know, it's not just, oh yes, Liverpool won. It's like, well, who cares? So it's interesting. We have different technologies that we can use to make it more interesting and exciting, because in our house, we were lucky enough to have a friend over from England when his team was in the championship, and they won a penalty shootout to get promoted into the Premier League. And I will say there were pieces of furniture broken. He was so excited. You know, he was just crazy. So, you know, they say this isn't life and death. It's much more important.
Yeah, and I also think that engagement or engaging people is not always, in any case, related to just growing a user base or constantly increasing things like unique users or listeners. For me, it's also, and what I observe in discussions, it's also about creating a loyal fan base, and this is maybe also, you have to take a lot of decisions in using everything out of technology. So you can simply send any kind of information if you want by a given channel, but the more you send without that a given fan or user asked for this information, it tends to be in the end boring, or just too much. It's some kind of an information overload. So I think that the main challenge also for the future might be that considering what are unique interests of each of us, and how how do I get this interest? Do I get this out of explicit settings fan does, or do I infer it out of behavior? I think this is also very interesting to keep an engagement rate high in the mid and long term, to not just have those quick wins in a huge peak of skill installations or app installations, but also creating this loyal fan base in the end.
Right, right. Well, it's funny. One of the I've been, I'm data driven, so I create and Alexa gives us some metrics, but they say really write your own. And so one of the metrics I've recently added is um, how long someone stays in my skill, because there's and I'll say my skill is basically question and answer. You say Open Premier League, then you say, how is Liverpool doing? Um, uh, who has the most goals? And it's question and answer back and forth. But I also have a visual version where I put up graphs and charts. And so what I've started to do is look at how long are people paying attention? Because it's like, okay, I put up a chart, they look at it, they go away, or they put up a chart and they stare at it. And that's been really fascinating. I mean, like last week, people were looking at my charts for over 8,000 hours, and that was really cool. And it's also been interesting, as you say, to measure where are people engaged. So I started by offering like 16 different statistics, who has the most touches, who has the most tackles, who has the most fouls. And I was very proud of all these statistics. And then I found that people just didn't use them. And, I would think that people would care about some of these, but in truth, some of them are interesting, but some of them, are not. And so it's been, I've been shifting in my mindset about, okay, do I sort of obsolete those statistics, or do I try to make them more interesting, or do I go with the things that people have shown that they like? I mean, I suppose I could let the customer lead me.
Yeah, that's very very important when it also comes to thinking about, okay, where do I want to invest in terms of engagement, and how do I measure this, so I can spend a lot of money and effort in building, like you said, a lot of charts and visualization of data, but in the end, it's also for me, it's kind of, how do I improve my decision making on this, and how do I measure engagement actually? Is it like in your case, is it how long does someone looks at a chart or a visualization of data? But I cannot imagine how could I measure this question and answering engagement, right? So this gives also, this is not this one type of engagement, I would say. And also, if you look into the sports domain, in my personal opinion, it also depends on the type of fan or persona you have. So the question is, how do I engage a Bundesliga fan or soccer fan with a digital product that watches a match live on TV, for example, compared to how do I engage a Bundesliga fan that is not able to watch it live by just reading a ticker, or who is in a different kind of country and is not able to watch the match even live, or does just have no access to a broadcast of this match. And this is also, I think that we think a lot about this actually, what are the needs of different kind of personas in terms of engagement. So simply sending a push notification, hey, this was a goal to someone who watches the match. Yeah, we can do this, but is this really the right term of engagement? Does the fan needs this actually? This is, I think, there's a lot of things in the market happening right now, which influences the way how we need to engage our fans.
Right. Well, it's actually kind of interesting in that some years ago I worked at Motorola, and they've got bought and bought and bought and bought. But at the time, they were making the set-top boxes, so people could watch TV. This is back when people watched TV by cable, and I actually got a patent for a system where one of the things about and so it goes to the different users, because there's a user who watches the game live, and then there's a user who's like, don't tell me anything, I'm going to watch the game tonight. And that user has to turn off all their social media and not talk to any friends. So I developed a system where it would capture your Twitter feed and remember it, but not present it to you. Then when you watch the game, it would replay the tweets in real time according to where you were. And now Motorola did not end up productizing it, so I got the patent. But there's that kind of interesting thing. And there's so many, and I don't know if this is true in Germany, but one of the TV products that is becoming very popular is replays of historically interesting games. And wouldn't it be interesting to watch those games with the same social media feeds that were going on at the time? So you could, rewatch. I mean, I'm a big fan of Leicester Foxes because they won the league when they were not supposed to. And, to watch, the last games with the Twitter feeds again would be pretty cool. But to your point, if I'm going to be watching the game tonight, I don't want to hear about it during the day.
Yeah. So you simply hide from your surroundings.
Right.
And don't want to get spoiled about anything. Yeah, it's I can feel it. And this is also interesting when what we observe, and maybe you also, when you don't know how the situation is in the United States, but if, for example, there's a world championship or a European championship where everyone in your neighborhood watches the match from the national soccer team of Germany, and there are people who get the broadcast signal via satellite and cable or terrestrial even. So who cheers first? So right. And this is also a very interesting phenomenon in I see this and I feel this when I watch a Bundesliga match actually, and I use one of our products as maybe a companion app. Or so how do I handle this spoiler moment actually? All right, there are a lot of moments where I get the notification first on my device, and what I do is just in the no disturb mode, or maybe deactivate push notifications in the end. But then for us, as I would say, as a distributor of this product, we lose the channel for engagement, right? When someone decides I don't want to receive notifications and does not reactivate it in the end, we lose completely our engagement channel after this. So this might tend to a bad situation because you have a lot of users, but you simply cannot trigger them and reactivate them once. So
right. Well, it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that a feature in the last couple of years from iPhone is do not disturb for an hour. Because like I'd be in a meeting and I'd turn off notifications and then I'd forget to turn it back on. But but you're exactly right about getting it on the side device too quickly. I mean, I'd be watching games and my son would be watching it on his phone, and I'd see that there's a penalty kick and the kicker is striding up to the ball, and my son says, "Oh, he missed it." And I'm like, "Shut up."
But do you, if you look into your skill, do you see some behavioral patterns when considering your fan base? So, for example, do you see patterns where people tend to use the skill more often in halftime breaks of a Premier League match, or is the skill less used during a match but more frequently after or before?
Okay, sure. So my skill is really not real time. It's it says tells you about the upcoming fixtures and recent results and statistics and analysis. So it's really not real time. I do see bumps, before the weekend set of matches, and then afterwards, and then on a Monday it'll drift off, and maybe on Thursday it'll come back. And when there's international break, I'm just I'm crushed. So, but it is interesting. One of the areas that I haven't gone into yet, but it's sort of next on my list, is football fans, as you know, are passionate both for and against. And so, in our house, mostly because of my son, we officially hate Arsenal. So, and sorry, Gunner fans, you have a fine team. But we will cheer just as much when Arsenal loses as when Tottenham wins. And so I'm actually going to be adding a feature that lets you say what your favorite team is and what your least favorite team is. And so right now, with the verbalization, Alexa has the ability to add excitement and disappointment. And so you can say, Liverpool is at the top of the table. I mean, they're not right now, but or you can say, Norwich City is still in the relegation zone, and it will say it just like that. So I have, whenever I'm talking about a team, I change the inflection based on where they are in the table. But that's from a neutral's point of view. I'd love to be able to say, Arsenal is doing bad. And some people went like that. And then there's also humor. And this is an area where I'm going to have to do some A/B testing. But, I've got friends who are in team who watch teams that aren't doing so well. And, if I said, how is Norwich City doing? They've suggested I say, are you sure you want to know? But I don't know whether that could be easily over the top.
Yeah. It's, I think for us, it's as the Deutsche Fußballliga or the Bundesliga, we tend to be neutral in any case. So I think we don't. One of our goals is not to enforce emotions or be some kind of biased on either the one side. So we simply stay neutral in this context. But what we maybe this is kind of similar to your idea or approach is, why do we assume that people are always interested in a followed club or favorite club? So if you or the other way around, why don't we look in respecting the seasonal context of a competition? So in the last years, I remember, because I'm personally a fan of FC Cologne, and we are a lot of times we are involved in the relegation to the second Bundesliga, and it's not only about that one club or two clubs compete on being relegated, but I would say 4 or 5, or in the end, none of these clubs are typically on the driver's seat of deciding if they want to be relegated or not. So they depend on the results of the other matches of the other clubs. And this is, for me, also considers to be a new driver for engagement. So if I watch a match and my club is being in the risk of being relegated, I also want to be informed what's happening on the other pitches, right? Because it just drives my decision, or the decision of if my club I'm supporting stays in the league or will be relegated in the end, right? Without wanting that people has some undifferentiated heavy lifting of doing some settings or subscriptions, or so the way I was thinking about, are we able to tell stories with data in terms of the seasonal context about the broader context of matches? Yeah.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting, and let me see if I can do a screen share because I have a chart that most of the charts I do just because I find them interesting, because I'm not getting paid for this really. So let me just find the screen share, and if I find it interesting, the thought is that maybe someone else will find it interesting. Um, so are you seeing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So league position changes. One of the things that that fascinates me about uh, uh, the football leagues um, is that how competitive they are, and this shows this graph basically shows how many times did a team's position in the table change, and
Mhm.
and this is sort of a proxy for whether the game matters or not. But like, look at Brentford. After 23 games, Brentford has changed their position in the table 18 times. So they're going up and down. And and conversely, you look at Chelsea, they haven't changed their position much because they've been at the top. And Liverpool hasn't, same for Liverpool. And Norwich hasn't changed position too much because they've been at the bottom. So it's really it's really quite interesting, and especially because, and this is for sort of American viewers, uh, American sports doesn't have the promotion relegation. So, the first place team, they're running away with it. And the last place teams are, uh, just, they're terrible, and so what? But in all of European soccer and Premier League, we have 20 teams, and the last game of the season between team in 16th position and 17th position matters. It really matters. And people get passionate about that, just like you said. And you know, and the different results. I mean, my friend from Tottenham talks about that there was a game in the championship a couple of years ago where the two teams were playing and they each could get relegated or not. And there were these complicated scenarios, but it was based on what another team did. And so they were both tied with 10 minutes left, and the other team won. So as long as this game stayed tied, neither one of them got relegated. But if either one of them took a chance, one team would win and one team would lose. So they all agreed to sit their butts on the ground and just wait for 10 minutes because they were both safe. And the fans were like, yes, don't move. Nobody move. Nobody move. We're okay. And so but they did that based on hearing the results from another game. So it's again, it's fascinating. And I'll say one of the things that my skill tries to do, and it was just sort of an experiment because they only recently set up Alexa so I can do this. I play background crowd noise. So like I'll say, the results of this week are, and so I've purchased, because I do things the right way, purchase background crowd noise, and I randomize it, and I randomize the volume. And I've had a couple of people say, oh, there were times when I couldn't hear what you were saying because it's crowd noise. And I said, right, yep, that's exactly right.
Like you're in a stadium, right?
Right. So, and I found that people really like the background crowd noise. Now, for me, like I said, it's different in that I can't cheer when a goal is scored because I'm not a live situation like you. But
yeah, but this showed what you actually showed is what treasures sports in terms of data has we can bring up, right? So these and I remember on regular discussions with my father-in-law on, okay, next game of FC Cologne, do you expect them to win or lose? So I'm not good at this in expecting anything, but I could imagine, or I think that that data can help you to drive discussions in the end, about exactly those things, independent if you bet some money on if a club wins or lose, but just increasing interest in a sport, in a league, in a club. All those hidden mechanics is some kind, maybe one of the key capabilities of the future to bring them, to give our fans the insights about this, right? In different kind of perspective. And this is also for me some form of engagement, that it's not always that I try to send you an information and that you might find relevant, but give you food of thought or food for discussions, and enable you to drive those discussions with your friends or other fans. This, I think, is very powerful. We can lift a lot of treasures in the future, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I want to show you one more chart, but I'm going to lead into it. For people who don't necessarily follow football, VAR is the video assistant referee who sometimes corrects or not what the referee's decisions, and these are decisions that can very often change the course of the game. And when VAR was first being introduced to Premier League, one of the groups that was opposed to it was the pubs, because the pubs said, if the referees get it right, then we won't have angry drinking fans in the next night debating about how terrible it was. Well, they didn't have to worry because VAR is a disaster. But this chart shows for each team how many VAR decisions went for you and how many went against. Now, every team, of course, thinks, well, my team is the one who suffered the most. And I'm never going to change their mind with this. And that's fine. But I could stare at this chart, and I have stared at this chart, for hours. It's like, wow, Brighton, they seem to be doing pretty well with the referees. And wow, Norwich is just getting annihilated by the referees. So it's just fascinating.
Yeah. I can imagine this drives a lot of discussions, actually, not only on the distribution of decisions for and or against, but also on in how many situations was a video assistant referee needed actually for a given club. So there were clubs where the amount was quite low, but then there were a lot of decisions needed for other clubs. So yeah, this
right. Well, the funny thing is,
data into different perspective, actually. Yeah.
Right. Well, the funny thing is, I actually used to be a FIFA certified referee. So
Really?
yeah. So and it's funny. I came over to England as a college student, and there was a college match where they didn't have a referee, and I said, I'm FIFA certified, and they thought they could run all over me. And then I whipped out the first yellow card, and they're like, "Oh, you know about that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know about that." So the theory is, I'm trained to watch the game for infractions, and I don't know. There's a lot to say. I mean, there are times when you look at the video replay, and it's like, okay, that was clearly a foul, and they see nothing, and it's like, hand was out, hit his arm.
Wait.
So what? And then there's ones where my son is like, oh, that's clearly a foul, and I said I would never give that as a foul. So it's referees have a very hard job, though we all agree that most of the referees are terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is very. Also I don't know if you heard about the Bundesliga match facts, actually, or there's also in partnership with AWS for the NFL Next Stats project is also for me something like what we discuss on, yeah, also the level of using artificial intelligence or machine learning on data. So things like goal probability of a shot or attacking zones, everything, all those hidden mechanics of a game Or what I find most fascinating is statistics about real tactical formations, right? So you see a tactical formation on the paper, for example, a 4-3-3 formation,
Mhm.
but then you see how in certain sections of the game, how does a team actually behaves. So do they play more offensive or defensive? Do they stick to the tactical formation that was announced before, or do they rearrange and be flexible in certain situations with the ball or without the ball? So this is also very, this is for me the most fascinating, also from a technical technology perspective, fascinating statistics that that we have the technology in place to provide this in real time to our fans, right? So not just about recalculating this after the game. No, you get it right in the time when you watch the match, and you can simply hold your device next to the match you observe, and then see. Oh, I don't see this from the perspective I watch it live on TV, but data tell me a story, and also for clubs or official persons from the teams, how they can use this for decision making or doing data driven decisions. Actually, it's very, yeah, very, very powerful and impressive on both sides.
Right. Well, Mike, I really like seeing on Premier League, they've always had, percent possession, or how much possession in the last 10 minutes. And
Yeah,
they started putting up the calculated, win-loss drop probability. And to me, it's not quite compelling. It's like, okay, the match is 0-0. Probability is like, okay, favors one, and then that team scores. And like, oh yeah, their probability of winning went up. Well, they scored, Um, but you're right in some of those hidden stats, in that, for example, Tottenham at the beginning of the season had the lowest total distance run by their players of any team. And us fans were like, well, yeah, they're kind of stinking up the joint. And then under Antonio Conte, they have gone to being the team that runs the most. And you could sort of guess that from watching, but it's really fascinating, to see that. So there's, but I think, again, it goes to the personas you talk about, in that, I may be watching a game as a neutral, I may be watching the game, as an interested fan. It's, I'm looking at the teams. I mean, I have feelings about most of the teams, but Everton playing Wolves, it's like, I want a good game. I want a competitive game. Um, uh, so I'm gonna watch that from a very different perspective than.
yeah,
It's funny. This last weekend, two of the games that are considered some of the best games in the last 5 years. I mean, Manchester City getting defeated by Tottenham. Oh my God. When nobody saw that coming. And then uh, Leeds versus Manchester United. Just brilliant, brilliant games that will be talked about and analyzed to death. And it's like, even if don't have strong feelings about either one, just the quality of the game was just, you can just sit there and love it. And the thing that I've noticed is we both continue to use emotional words to describe it. And so
yeah,
this, yeah, it's data, but it's data about something we care about.
really, yeah, and absolutely. And in data is just the start, right? It's about, like we observe a chart and we tell stories right now in interpreting different things or mechanics. This, I think this is engagement in the end, that we use all these technology and data we have in the end to tell awesome stories and to drive discussions and to create emotions in the end. And I also think it's easy for, in our business, it's easy for matches where a lot of goals are happening, but how do you handle especially those boring games where it's 60 minutes 0-0, so and ball possession is 50-50 and a lot of things happening in the midfield and not in the zones. So this maybe requires more need for engagement and creating emotions because people tend to be bored maybe in the end while watching the match. So I think this is also very challenging in thinking about, like I said, how to respect what's happening on the pitch and the mechanics of the game and how a match runs in terms of what kind of additional data or insights can I give a fan, him or her, to to not get bored, to drive exactly those discussions. This is, I think, very challenging in the end, right?
Right.
Also to get the feedback in the end about what worked and what not.
Right. Well, it's funny because especially here in America, people will often say, oh, our football is boring. It's like, well, but you wouldn't say that about a no-hitter in baseball. I mean, I would find that incredibly boring, but each to their own. But I remember some years back, and I wish I could remember her name, but the coach of the U.S. national women's team used to keep a count on the number of unforced errors, and she was very hard on her team for unforced errors, and so they would try to keep it, down in single digits, which at this point seems, that's incredibly ambitious. But you can have stats that celebrate the good, but also stats that celebrate the bad. It's like, wow, Leeds have had 27 unforced errors in the last 10 minutes. And there are teams like Manchester City who will just string passes together, and that can be interesting or not. But it's how many when the game is 0-0 and it's being fought in the middle, it's like, okay, why? Are teams giving the ball up a lot, or are they trying? So yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of stats about things like how much time are they spending in the channels, and are they just trying to do long balls, and how successful has a team been in trying to play it from the back versus giving a long ball, or even my friend from Huddersfield was like, oh my God, I want a statistic for how many times we've done a throw in and immediately lost the ball. So I mean, I think there's lots of room for interesting stats, and I think it can be sort of the bad. It's like I think as a fan, I mean, my friend Tom, if he was watching the Huddersfield game and it said, wow, Huddersfield has lost 80% of their throw-ins, he would enjoy his shared anger at that.
So how what I would be interested in from your perspective, as you are sitting in the United States, and we talk a lot about German football, but also football in the Premier League. So how difficult is it for you to I take the term be engaged on what's happening in England or in Germany when there's a time zone shift? So when matches played, it's maybe in the night or during work time for you. Is it different? Do you have different kind of requirements to be engaged, to be interested in this, or?
Well, I'll give you I'll see if I can. This is my. I'll see if I can get the camera to show this.
It blurs very much, but oh yeah, okay,
yeah. So I'm watching one game on the big TV, and then 4 games on my laptop, and then probably another game on my phone. So in our household, the games generally start at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, and then 9 in the morning on Sundays. And during the week, games are hard, but work from home is awesome because I have my home computer, my work computer, and my home computer. But we in the East Coast, it's not too bad. You know, in Los Angeles, they're watching the game at 4 a.m, and that's pretty harsh. But we have arranged our lives, around this, and I will say the league does a really good job. I mean, just before the pandemic, Premier League has this thing called Premier League Morning, and so they came out to Boston, and my son and I went, and they had actually closed off a sort of Fenway Park, the baseball stadium, and they had 10 big screen TVs, and we were watching all the games, all the fans together. My son and I each got our picture taken with the Premier League trophy. Oh! And they had all the sports broadcasters. So Rebecca Lowe, Robbie Earl, Robbie Musto, were there, and they were incredibly gracious. And I said, Rowan, go get your picture taken with Robbie Earl. He's like, oh, I can't do that. And we were in line for something, and I said to the person behind me, I said, do you mind holding my spot for a second? I said, sure. We go up, and Robbie Earl was incredibly gracious, took his picture. And I said, Rowan, this is their job. Their job is to make me happy, to make you happy. This is what they do. And they were just wonderful about it. So I sort of lost track of the question, but I get you. I just go back to my passion. But so yeah, we move life events around to watch the games.
Yeah, maybe exactly for this some of these situations we need the spoiler mode. You always have the patent on, so this
Right.
sounds very valuable for certain kind of people.
Right. Well, and it's funny too. I mean, I go back to I don't know. I'm guessing that y'all went through a phase of having the games with no fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so some of the broadcasters here would pipe in artificial crowd noise. And it's like, okay, but it was actually in the quiet, actually interesting to hear the players talk. But then when fans came back in the stadiums, it's like, oh my God, this is our oxygen. This is what we've been missing.
Yeah.
So,
We had a lot of matches without visitors, and I also watched a match. I think it was a Champions League match on Amazon Prime or DAZN in Germany, where they also had this audio setting of creating the stadium atmosphere. So I don't know if you hear the commentary still, but or just only this artificial generated stadium sounds. But for me as a fan, it was interesting, and I think technology can do a lot to bring the stadium atmosphere at home. But thinking about this more in terms of how digital products be a companion for a live visitor on TV, or even a companion app for someone who sits in the stadium. So and he's very focused and concentrated on what's happening there. I think this is there are a lot of hopefully a lot of innovations happening in this field on how to bring the stadium atmosphere more at home. And stadium atmosphere means also for me from a fan perspective, or that I might be able to hear the coach screaming, or depending on where do I sit, of course. And this was also very fascinating for me. I played football in my youth, and then you when you talk to your players, this is also very interesting, how they communicate. And I remember also a documentation from I think it's from FC Cologne, where they had those testing matches, and one player had a microphone on his jersey. So, and they replayed this testing match, and they cut it in all those scenes where player said something to each other. This was very interesting. This is a perspective of a match I don't get usually when watching it from TV or in the stadium, actually. Yeah. was also very engaging in the end.
Oh yeah.
And I requested more of this somehow. I wanted to know more about um, what do they talk, or how do they handle situations. So this is somewhat I cannot really imagine. I'm not a professional football player, so I cannot imagine what if I would run a sprint on the pitch. I don't know if I focused on listening to somebody else. I'm just focused on breathing and not
Right.
dying in the end. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's funny that you say all that, because I mean, one of the, I don't know if you have access to it there, but on Amazon Prime Video, I think it is, they've had a few series on behind the scenes. So a couple last year they did a whole thing where they had cameras inside the Tottenham dressing room, and that was really interesting.
Yeah.
To see how angry the players get, and it's like you didn't run, and they're getting in each other's faces about stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. I will say, a couple of people have said after using my Premier League skill, they finally understand Ted Lasso. But another thing I could see eventually is I've started getting into using the VR headsets, and it would be interesting to, and we probably almost have the technology where I could pick a seat in the stadium and watch, and have it all adjusted so I could see it from my position.
And maybe a club can offer to buy you a virtual seat, so you don't have to go to the stadium, but watch it with the same atmosphere at home, on virtually on the device. So we can spin around a lot of crazy ideas, or even, and this is what I saw right before we did the session, is also a post from FC Cologne where they did some MVPs around having a replay of a goal scene from the perspective of the player. So you see that what you see when you watch it on television during a broadcast, but then it transitions to what does the player actually see. So when he shots, and then imagine I can watch a complete match from the perspective of a player.
Oh yeah.
This is really cool, I would say. But yeah, I don't know if this is feasible from a regulatory perspective, that players wear some glasses, special glasses, or something like this. But yeah,
or maybe it's just computer, computer interpolation. But the thing is, there's so much room for this, and there's so much hunger for this. I would pay extra. I think that there's sort of almost unlimited money and possibilities. So we're coming up on the top of the hour. This has been fascinating, and I think we should, independent of any videos, we should keep chatting, because we're both obviously interested, and maybe our two companies can help each other out. I'm just me. But yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I think sport can be a real powerful force. Hopefully, powerful force for good.
Driver of technology in the end, right?
Indeed.
Or adapting technology.
Yeah. Any last words?
Thank you, of course. So it was really also I can rephrase what you said. It was very interesting. We started to talk about engagement, but ended about innovative ideas, how we can use technology to bring a different perspective to the sports, or maybe in the end, it's also about increase of engagement for me. So it's about increasing the fascination for sports, and in the end, increasing interest. I really much enjoyed the hour with you, and looking forward to rewatch what I said.
Yeah.
In the next
So
days.
I'm sure we'll chat afterwards, but I'm gonna stop the recording, and thank you. Type pause.